everybody. Welcome to another installment of Netflix and Phil. I am Phil, and with me today we have painter, sculptor, collector, YouTube genius, Royce Alcoser. So give it up. So grateful to have discovered you on YouTube and so many videos that you have propagated on there that are amazing. And I know my viewers can tell by what's behind you. They probably have an idea of what you do and have done in your past. So, but to kick things off, Royce, I want to go ahead and ask you what inspired you to begin your role with Disney?
It started when I was 8 years old and I was watching the Disney Channel, and there was this segment called Imagineer That. And it was so interesting to me. It kind of showed behind the scenes of, attractions. And there was this little host. You always see him at the archives now. His name's Tom Morrow 2.0. He's a little robot. And I actually got to meet him at Imagineering. So that was a full circle moment for me. But that kind of was what sparked my interest in, creating. I always loved to paint and draw, but, I just loved the movies growing up. And it's something that I always knew I wanted to do it. I never knew when or how, but it worked out at a fairly early age for me. So I'm just very grateful.
Well, and that's very admirable. And it kind of leads me to my next question here. Was there any sort of schooling or formal training that you did before you got into your role as a figure finisher, or what preceded all of that?
Well, I did go to college, and I was very lucky to have. His name is Glenn Hill. He was a animator at the studios. He worked on The Fox and the Hound and The Rescuers. Well, with Glenn King, who's a animator. He retired now, but he kind of took me under his wing. I showed interest, and I used to show up to class like an hour before and I would stay an hour after, and he would give me basically lessons on animation and drawing. And I had a really amazing painting teacher. I learned in oil, and I kind of moved away from that to now acrylics, and before I got into figure finishing. What was the second half of your question? I'm sorry.
You know what? I've long forgotten, but that's okay because it's already evolved. I was just going to mention that I was a child when those movies came out, The Fox and the Hound, The Rescuers. So that was my introduction to Disney, and I'm such a fan of the style. One of my favorite animated films is The Rescuers. My favorite villain is Madame Medusa.
She's amazing. I love her.
She is amazing. Before I hit record, we were talking about our history as a college program. I explained to you that I did a majority of mine in Florida. Did you do your CP term in Anaheim strictly, and what was that?
Yep, I did it in Anaheim. I did the Jungle Cruise.
Jungle Cruise skipper. Now, it's known to be kind of a difficult role. Would you characterize it as such?
Oh, yes. It was just very tiring on your voice. Every 9 minutes, you're going around the Jungle Cruise and you're given a literal performance. And you get like 3-minute breaks between loading and unloading, and you could do that for 8 hours. And it was quite a production, and we didn't get paid very much at all for the show that we basically were putting on. But I mean, it was fun. I had a good time. I don't think I could do it now, but I was like 18 at the time, so it was fine.
Which is wonderful, and I've often attested, and we've gone on to other things, but my I guess initial exposure to the working world was the Disney company, and I will never be ungrateful for what that provided me. I worked at this field attraction. I was the Living with the Land boat ride used to have narrators at the top of it.
I remember that.
Oh, do you? Because I was there in the 90s, and yeah, we spilled. You go through the diorama, of course, and you don't say anything, and then when you come in the greenhouses.
Oh, it's great. I thought they still had that. No, it's a recording now, huh?
Yeah, it is. It's all. I watched a video recently. It's all narration. I think that comes from the boat itself.
It's so weird that they would take that away. It's so much more personable. Gives attraction more life.
I agree. I think it's nice to have a human element, and I think more and more we're seeing that stripped away from not only iconic Disney attractions, but the working world in
Oh
general.
yeah, that's just the route. Having to pay less people. It's easier to pay a projection or
Yeah, and I can attest. You mentioned Disney's notorious for not paying their cast members very well. I don't want to beat a dead horse, but
not in that role.
yeah, exactly.
Sure.
Well, speaking of AI, and I know Disney populates a lot of their attractions with animatronics, and this is essentially your wheelhouse.
So figure finishing, basically our role is to take care of the animatronics. That's it. That was our sole position. Anything that moved, however. So for instance, I mean, it amazed me certain things that I would have to paint. Like prior to the refurb in Toontown, there was a bunch of spinning like wheels and like birdhouses in front of Goofy's house. Well, that is animated, it moves, so we paint
Yeah.
it. Um, we would get a bunch of random, props and set pieces in. But for the majority of the time, of course, it was like pirates, tiki room birds, small world dolls, Winnie the Pooh, Splash. We spent a lot of time in there. Just anything that had a moving figure, we would take care of. And my specific role was a pictorial artist. So
Hmm.
as a pictorial artist, I was just stationed in the paint shop,
Okay.
and the figures would come in on a yearly basis, hopefully, and
Yeah.
go through a refurb. So they'll get completely, deskinned, um, or defeathered, deferred, down to their fiberglass shells, and they'll be taken apart, dismantled, and re-geared a lot of times, or just run through a test, to make sure that the figure is moving correctly. And there's three art directors from Imagineering that we had over us. And the first one, his name was Rick, and he would be just in charge of the animation. So nothing more than the movement to make sure it was lifelike. That was literally just his job.
Wow.
And then after that, it moved over to the figure finishing world.
Okay.
And that's where we would fur, feather, paint. And that's when we had art director Leslie, that would look at it all moving in its entirety completed to sign off, that it's done.
Wow. So that came to you in a studio, I take, or like a workshop. So they came to you annually, correct?
Yeah,
Or but did you ever find yourself actually having to go to the attractions themselves and being at the locations?
every day. So figure finishing, our hours are 3 a.m. to 11 a.m. So from 3 to, depending on the season, we usually would be back in the shop after lunch, so 6 or 7. We'd be out in the attractions, for the majority of the time, and then after lunch we'd be in the shop. I did eventually switch to 5, just because I was tired of going to bed at 6 o'clock in the afternoon. Um, so 7's a lot better, right? I would start at 5, and then I would go to 1,
Okay.
and that period, I depending on, of course, the need, I wouldn't go out to the attractions as much. I would just work on the figures in the shop. But I did the 3 to 11 for like a year, and it
I
was a
can
lot.
imagine that's tough. Was that area where you had to paint, was it near the theme park itself, or was it a good distance away?
So we were right behind Toontown
Oh,
for a
okay.
long time, and then we moved off property now, um, like 2 miles away. But
Okay.
we were right behind Toontown, so it was really convenient, because if you were in Small World and you forgot your, color for your blush, you could just walk right back there. Now it's a lot more of a, marathon to go get, something. So you really have to double check everything. But yeah, I mean, it was very convenient. We had golf carts. We would golf it all the way to Mermaid or Racers, Monsters Inc. on the other side, because we did both parks.
Well, how easy and convenient that would have been. You mentioned blush, and this isn't necessarily one of my questions, but I learned or garnered from your videos that there's a lot of attention to detail, and there's probably um, records or data on all the figures, and you probably have to adhere to a certain palette, etc. But you're the expert. Explain that to me. Like if, say, a small world doll like the one that I see behind you here, if they needed upgrading or touch up, how do you reference what needs to be done for that specific character?
This goes back to the 60s. The original Wet Imagineers really did an amazing job at documentation. We used the exact same documentation as they did. So they come with, and I have some of those, but they're still packed away in the other room. But that you basically get like this piece of paper that has little color callouts on them, and you color match it with this color system. It's a whole thing, and once you get it right, you paint it. But basically, yeah, they took front on side 360 photographs of everything. They were so specific, even down to how you fur and feather birds, how you do blush. But yeah, everything is super documented. And the art director from Imagineering, she will look at the original documentation and look at whatever you painted and compare it before she signs, because it has to look identical. Because a lot of times, a lot of guests don't realize that there are duplicates of some characters, and we'll swap them sometimes midday if it breaks, or at night, and they'll never know. And that's the magic.
That is the magic. That's amazing to me that they, back in the 60s or what have you, had the foresight to really be so detailed as to take down or take that 360 imagery and note the palette for each character. It's just mind-boggling to me.
Oh, there's like a library.
Yeah.
Literally, there's a whole department in Imagineering that's just specific to documentation. And show quality services. So it's a thing, a whole librarian that will pull that for you. It just depends, but yeah, it was very cool to see the original of how it looked, and then replicated. And when it came to me in paint, it would already be costumed for the most part. So just to see even the costumers that remade them were so detailed, and so just everything looks identical unless an Imagineer changed it down the line. But for the most part, it was very cool. And you would see notes from Alice Davis and Mark Davis. Yes, they're handwritten notes. This is you do this, pay close attention to this beak design, and it was really, really cool.
Yeah, we're going back in time.
It was, that was the joy of working in the maintenance side of Imagineering, is you really got to work on the attractions that you would think Imagineering works on. For the most part, Imagineering is production, new things, but we really got to work on just maintaining and enhancing and plussing the old stuff. And that was, for me, just a dream come true.
That's wonderful. And you've shared a few names of individuals that have worked perhaps originating or creating the first iteration of these attractions, which leads me to my next question. Was there perhaps an Imagineer still with the company, or one that may no longer be with us, that really inspires you? Or give me several, I don't care, but what names do you immediately think of?
Oh, my favorite is Blaine Gibson. That man, he sculpted pretty much everything behind me. He was the master of the model shop. Even he has the room that a lot of touring does now in Imagineering. It's called the Blaine Gibson Studio Shop or something like that. They named it after him. I mean, he was such a talent. Definitely him. Claude Coates, of course. Who doesn't love Mark Davis? Mary Blair, her attention to color. I mean, all the originals, really. If I have to choose, though, I mean, it would definitely be Blaine. He was just amazing. And that still worked there. I mean, so many people left. Kim's still there, Kim Irvine, who was my boss's boss, basically. And, I got to meet her a lot. And she's the daughter of Leota Toombs, Madame Leota.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah, because she's the face within the crystal ball, if you will. That's wonderful that there's that family legacy. Curious, so Disney aside, and you talked about your schooling, etc. When you work on an art project, maybe it focuses on a Disney character, maybe not. What is your favorite medium, or how do you like to create best as an artist?
Paint. That was my first love. But there's so many aspects of furring and feathering that I just have grown to love. There was a woman in the shop. Her name was Debbie, and she used to fur and feather all the birds. And I would watch her so many times to see how she did it, because I would do it at home and it wouldn't turn out right. So I would go to her and I'd be like, how do you do this? Why is my fur not looking right? And I would just watch her, and I got yelled at a few times for not working, but
No.
I was wanting to learn, because you have to think of it this way. These people that I worked with, I was the youngest one in the shop when I started. I was 22, 23. And I think the second youngest was in his 40s. So everyone was like 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. There were so many amazing talent, but there really wasn't the next gen that they were really mentoring. So I really wanted to just absorb everything from multiple masters, and that's how I kind of learned to love, plaster and resin and silicone and fur and feathers, so aside from just paint. But when I was there, they kind of restricted us in baskets. You really couldn't go there. You could watch, but you couldn't touch it because it has to come to you, unless, like, once I was working on a raven for the Haunted Mansion, and she was, even the black fur, the inside of the fur wasn't black, so I had to like dye it black. So there was times where you could cross over, but they were pretty strict with us.
Because I know how it was in attractions. There's an SOP, and if you deviate from it, even if you're speaking to a guest as a skipper, I'm sure you know this, or at the land boat ride, sometimes you got in trouble.
Yep. But I think back in our day, they were so much more strict. I walk in the park today and I see people with exposed tattoos, facial hair. I got yelled at for hair touching collar. It was insane.
I'm mind boggled by it today, because you're right. Because when I was part of the program and in attractions, the men couldn't have earrings, no exposed tattoos.
Right.
Your hair couldn't be long, etc. And the girls, of course, could wear earrings, but it had to be a certain diameter. And it was just...
They were very intense.
I'm glad they're kind of loosening that a bit. So I kind of want to point out some of the great items that are here behind you, and all in the description box, of course, direct my viewers to your channel, which you keep going and maintaining. Is there anything that behind you that, say one item, maybe that immediately draws your eye, that you can give us a little history on?
Oh gosh.
Just pick one, Royce.
Maybe Jiminy Cricket.
Okay.
I don't know if you can see my maquettes let me see if I can move this, my animation desk.
Oh, I love your desk. It's amazing.
Tons of maquettes. I just got the Zeus thing. A lot of people think a lot of things are given to me, where I buy a lot of things at auctions. In terms of history, I mean, a lot of these I made during COVID. We were trapped, and I was just so bored and not fulfilled as an artist. So I just started making things that I would normally have worked on. And a lot of people are like, how does it look? So, I cheat, because you have to understand, I worked, a lot of these things are real, but I worked on the real things so I could replicate it. It's really hard to choose like one piece, but I mean, I love my crickets. I love my birds. I think I'm a bird guy. I really love that.
I love that. And you mentioned something about furring or feathering birds. So I'm just curious, I myself, having worked in the tiki room, as I mentioned to you earlier, how do you source a feather for a tiki bird, or a raven even? How does that work?
The lead, they'll order them from just online.
Really?
Yeah, I know the website. I'll tell you off camera if you want.
Okay, yeah, you can tell me off camera.
It's really not like this brand thing, It's just what they do with them, right? I mean, it's how a lot of times the actual fur, like for instance, I have some fur here. This will be dyed in-house. So a lot of the fur color won't, we can't just buy that, because it has to match the color. Remember from the documentation. And Disney has a very specific brand of fur that stretches because the figures move, the birds. So this isn't one of those, but that's another company in like New York that makes the fur specifically for Disney.
Now, I did see in one of your videos, I have a handful of name tags that I amassed over my years with the company. During your tenure with the company, I saw in one of your videos a whole slew of them. So I was just curious, how many name tags do you think you have in total?
Probably 15 plus.
Yeah,
It would give us name tags like crazy
right,
for
left. Yeah.
special events. Or, you remember? I mean, it was just weird, or special like anniversaries. Those were really big. Um, I think I would say probably 15. I never really counted, to
I
be
have
honest with
like
you.
I have less than five, but I think you
Really?
spent more time. Yeah, I have less than five, but I think you spent more time with them than I.
I lost a lot too. I remember I lost two in the Jungle Cruise. When we had our like little mic, and it would
Yeah,
always get caught, and it would pull it off, and there it would go in the water.
right in the water.
Yep. I lost so many name tags, and I got yelled at for not having a name tag. And I would have to, like, I'm telling you, they were so strict.
Okay. Well, that said, we talked about your painting, your sculpting, your collecting. I did discover you ventured into another medium. Is it true you have a book?
The Enchanted Canvas, I actually worked on that during lockdown.
Oh, wow,
This
amazing.
I had to do something. I was bored out of my mind, and it's always something that I wanted to do but never had the time. So that was, a big passion project for me. I worked with my best friend on, the editing. She's very good with literature, and I designed the characters, but I hired a graphic artist to take them and to transfer them into her style because I loved it, and then to make it for the book frame, like the back, the spine. She did all of that. So that was a process. I will say to anybody that wants to publish a book or to be an author, you really have to love the product because it's a lot of work. Even finding a publisher, an agent, all of that. I mean, it took over a year to get it online. I mean, it was a long process, but it was so fun. It's so rewarding. I want to write another one day.
Well, and as you should. So first of all, quickly, I don't know if you could, I can always put it in the description, but if one of my viewers is curious about it, where can they find the Enchanted Canvas?
It's on Barnes and Noble.
So Royce, the channel is Netflix and Phil, and often I talk to my guests about favorite movies. So is there a motion picture, Netflix or otherwise, Disney Plus or otherwise, that when I say, Royce, what is your favorite movie? What do you say?
Fried green tomatoes.
You're kidding. I
Fried
have to know why.
I love it. I grew up in a very similar town, like very rural, very, it had like a little cafe like that, but it has to be Fried Green Tomatoes. I adore that movie so much. I could watch it a million times. It's just the characters, right? I mean, I don't know if you know it, right? Kathy Bates.
Kathy Bates, Mary Stuart Masterson.
It's just the story. It's so interesting to me. It's so slow. That's one thing I miss in movies today is just, I feel like they're so fast paced and they want to tell you so much things at once that you really don't connect that much with characters and you learn more about them. And that's what makes a movie so great, right? Is you learn about, even with Disney movies today, I miss so much the Quasimodo, the character that is being held back from something and how he gets from A to B, but it's so slow. You learn their backstory, you learn, their struggle through amazing songs and beautiful character designs. I could go on and on about my complaints about the Disney animation these days. It's not even so much the story, it's just the character designs. It drives me insane. I had lunch with Mark Henn like 3 or 4 years ago, and I picked his brain artistically on how he designed Belle, what was going through his mind when he designed Simba, Stitch, all of these amazing characters. And he would tell me he would sit at the mall and look at women and look at their hairstyles and think about, okay, how could volume be blown up here? And that's how he designed so many amazing characters. And I look at characters today, and I know Disney is doing this because they want girls to imitate their hair a little bit more realistically and a little bit more like, oh, I could wear my hair like that, opposed to Ariel's bangs, which have so much volume. But that's my complaint is they're movies, like it's fantasy. I think people want to see uniqueness that, especially from an artist, when I was learning to draw, I learned just an overall shape of a character very organically, and then I would go in with the details. So sorry to go off on a tangent.
No, this is huge. And I think anyone watching will say, oh gosh, I got to check out Royce's channel, because you get into your what you admire about the Disney process and animation in years past. And I agree with you. The current spate of films have been to kind of make all the main characters relatable to boys and girls, etc., which I don't hate, but you think maybe it's gone too far in one direction. Maybe we should get more of the fantasy back in. I don't know.
I definitely think that they're overthinking things.
Yes.
Even with Splash Mountain change.
Yes.
I remember hearing Tony Baxter. He was talking about he will always stand by that design, and that attraction, that it's not meant to be hurtful. It's not even, those characters were in the movie, but it wasn't, about the movie. It was just, Bear Rabbit. And I think that Disney's just in a very weird funk of trying to please everybody when they never will. I think that they had an amazing formula, what they were doing. Telling good stories, right?
Yes.
Telling good stories with good characters, good songs.
I see what you're talking about, and I see the shortcuts and the less consideration for what we were all accustomed to growing up. And I know they had a really troubling year this past year, and I know Wish probably didn't do as well as they had hoped, and there's a multitude of factors. So I think they're due for a reset.
I think that they should bring back those storytellers and just breathe new magic. Like I love Princess and the Frog. I am excited for this new attraction, but when I see, because I've seen renders, I've seen concept art, I know what it's going to be, and it would have been fine on a new set of land and an addition to Critter Country or Frontierland, not a replacement for what it is. But again, they're just trying to please everybody, and I don't know, it's a uphill battle, it seems.
Yeah, they're caught between a rock and a hard place. So if anyone's curious as to what we're talking about that doesn't know, just research Song of the South or Splash Mountain turning into Tiana's Bayou Adventure.
I'm excited though for it. And for what I've seen, it'll be cute. It'll be charming. It's just when you replace something, it needs to be better. That's what Kim Irvine always told our teams was the audience is not dumb. They know what it is, what they love. If you're going to replace it, it better be better than what was there, or people are going to get mad. So when I think of Splash Mountain, I think of such history and such amazing animatronics. Mark Davis's brilliance, and Blaine Gibson's hands, and even the facade. Something that a lot of people can see now in Florida. Like look at what was there compared to what it is now. Like
I've seen video of it, how they're augmenting it, and it was so iconic before, and now it's different.
A mountain, just a weird hill.
Splash Hill.
put the boat up on top at least with willow tree.
Well, that was the original rendering, right? Where they had a boat on the top most point of the mountain.
It's hard because in Anaheim, I think that facade would have worked, but not in Florida, just because hurricanes and stuff like that. But and of course they can't make them different for some reason. It's just cheaper, and I think that that's the moral of it is Disney is just trying to tighten its belt a little bit everywhere they can.
Bottom line, it's all about where are we as far as money, what's coming in and what's going out. So That said, I want to end with saying you're very talented, and I know you have some projects coming up that I wish you much success with. I think you're probably one of my first guests where I don't want to stop chatting with you. So if you ever have some time or if some time passes between now and us meeting again, I would love to chat with you about anything you're working on in the future. But before I let you go, Royce, how can my viewers find you? What social media outlets?
I have Instagram. It's Imagine with Royce, and then I have the same title on YouTube, Imagine with Royce. My main two that I use. I used to get a lot more engagement and a lot more I don't know. Something's changed. A lot of people moved to TikTok, I hear.
Yes, TikTok is big right now, and then Threads is starting to.
What is Threads? Is that for the sewing community? I'm so.
I'll let you know. I'll go ahead and end it here, but thank you, everyone. This is Royce Alcoser. Stick with this channel to see what his future projects will entail. I'm Phil, and thank you again for joining us on Netflix and Phil. Bye.